feeling very sick, you're probably very scared. If you or a partner just lost your job and you're dealing with filing for unemployment or trying to figure out how to pay the bills, that's a whole other experience. Maybe someone you know, someone you care about relies on daily care. Maybe they're at a nursing home or they have a caregiver that visits. Every time your loved one comes within 6 feet of staff, there's a chance of infection. And when you couple that with the fact that there are not really visitors right now, that adds loneliness into this whole stew of feelings that people are dealing with right now. And if you're like me, your kid doesn't have school, but you have work to do. And there's stress. Maybe there's conflict between partners who both need to work. And a lot of kids are really pining for their teachers and their classmates. Or maybe you live alone and you really miss seeing other people. If you're, or if you know anyone who's in a household with domestic abuse, this is an exceptionally dangerous time. There are also a lot of folks who find themselves with too much spare time. And it can be challenging to find ways to fill that time with different things, with hobbies, with movies, with whatever you're finding compelling at the moment. And if you're decent with a needle and thread, you might find a sense of purpose mass producing face masks right now. I'm sure there are many more versions of this pandemic, but what I'm getting at is that while we are all in this together, our individual struggles are different. And my experience is likely not the same as all of yours. And so what works for me might not resonate for you. But there is one common experience that we're all having right now. No matter your circumstances, if you're living in Central PA, there's one thing we all have in common right now, and it is that it is spring. It is spring for you and it's spring for me. There are tulips blooming outside, all the trees are showing off their best blooms, people are pushing lawnmowers around the yard, and I am pushing seeds into the soil. Spring is defined by new growth and new life. And that feels very much in contrast to the health crisis that surrounds us right now. That contrast, that new growth, that new life has helped me. I'm really grateful that it is spring. I mean, imagine if this virus had spread in winter instead. We'd be even more cooped up. We'd be cold. It would be darker. And I think I would go crazy. So, like I said, it's spring and I push seeds into the soil. And I'm not the only one doing it. There are countless other gardeners and farmers returning to a familiar routine that we've followed year after year. And we are joined by many new gardeners, folks who've never grown a plant for food and are maybe starting a garden this year for the first time. And what a year it is to start gardening. New gardeners are probably running into a lot of questions. For example, how do I prepare a space for gardening? Do I need to fertilize? What should I plant? When should I plant it? Luckily, there are a lot of good resources to get started. And honestly, a little trial and error is just fine. Seeds want to grow. That is what they do. All we have to do is support them. We don't actually make them grow. The seed gets it all started, and then the new plant takes over, and all we have to do is to provide the things that the plant needs. So a little water, some sun, or maybe some shade, depending, some compost. Even if you start gardening and you mess up, you'll likely still end up with a lot of good food. And that's actually something I really like about gardening. No matter how many years you do it, there's always something new to try. Some new technique or a different variety of tomatoes to plant, maybe a flower you've never grown before that draws in beneficial insects, mulching to reduce how much water you need. I know gardeners and farmers who've been at this for 40 years, 50 years, and are still just as excited by spring. Now, what to plant during a global pandemic? At first, I thought when trying to answer this question that I was navigating new territory. But then I looked back to what farmers and gardeners have done during hard times in the past. There are certain foods that are a little more reliable. I turned to two different books for advice, and I want to show them to you here. There's I don't know if I can, here, watch out. Can you back up a second? Sorry, co-host. There's the Ruth Stout No Work Garden book, and I can put all this in the chat for folks who are interested. And there's also this really good book called The Resilient Gardener, Food Production and Self-Reliance in Uncertain Times. This is a much more contemporary text, and the Ruth Stout book came out in the 40s. But both are really good resources for thinking about what types of crops to grow in a year when you're really thinking about wanting to grow a lot of food and also not being sure of what might happen from 1 week or 1 month to the next. And so if I had to recommend some crops for this year, I would suggest potatoes. They're easy to plant. They have a really long shelf life. You can get a lot of food from a patch of potatoes. Corn is also a good one. A lot of people are familiar with growing sweet corn. There's a lot of information in that Resilient Gardener book about growing flint corn, or corn that you could make into cornmeal, or you could pop it to make popcorn. Squash, especially winter squashes, they store for a long time and they're very nutritious. And I have to mention beans. Green beans are great during the summer, but you can also grow drying beans like black beans and garbanzos if you want something that will last beyond just the main growing season. I mean, if you've been to the grocery store in the past month, you've seen that some of the shelves are empty or near empty. Yes, you can. Pardon me. So like I was saying, if you've been to the grocery store recently, you probably noticed that there are some empty shelves. And that's because we rely on this large global food system. And it does have its strengths, but it also has its weaknesses. And I think part of the reason that more people are starting a garden now is this desire to feel a sense of control, that we can plant some carrots and they will grow and you will have food to eat. It feels really good. And it also feels good to get outside. I've been going for walks, but planting and weeding gives me more reasons to spend time outdoors. You're probably all aware of the physical benefits of being active and the mental health benefits of spending time outdoors. So those are some additional reasons that gardening is really sustaining me right now. That's a little bit about, what has worked for me. And like I said before, what resonates for me might not be the same for you, but I'm hoping that there's something in what I'm sharing. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second, kiddo. So that's what I wanted to share with everyone today. I'm figuring that maybe people might have a couple questions or things that they want to talk a little bit about, or maybe if anyone here has started gardening and wants to share a little bit about their experience. Kurt, would that be an okay direction to take that in?
Awesome. Yeah, let me click unmute for folks. Thank you so much, Jen. We appreciate it. Appreciate the perspective on how we're experiencing this in vastly different ways based on our social location, and also some similarities. Weather is a big topic of conversation, obviously, for everyone, I think, all the time, and mood and weather seem to go together pretty importantly. And yeah, happy for folks to ask any questions, offer any thoughts.
I'll jump in if people don't mind. So Jen, so I like doing the summer garden as well, but I'm curious. So part of the fun for me is not just the food that you actually get out of it, but just watching the plants grow. From your experience, is there any particular plant that's just really cool and fun to watch grow?
Oh man, there are so many. Just today, so there are 2 AmeriCorps workers that I work with growing seedlings for the community garden and also the Bucknell farm. And we had seeded some cucurbits, so anything in the squash family, like your winter squash, your cucumbers, your watermelons, all of those different crops. They're all in the same family, and they are very fast growers. So you put them in the soil, and within a couple days, they are up and maybe a day or two later, and they started to leaf out, and they're big, like the seeds are really big, especially like the winter squash seeds, and then they make these really big plants really fast, and I feel like that can be really fun to watch. Yeah, I think just growing a variety of things, and you'll start to see like the differences between the different plants. That's really enjoyable, right? To see, you know, anything that's like beets or spinach that whole chenopod family, like they come up a certain way and that looks different from how tomatoes and peppers come up. So I think just trying out a variety of things and sort of seeing the differences between them is really enjoyable.
One more question? Thought, comment? What are you growing this year that you're excited about?
So hello everyone. I actually joined the community garden this year. And, you know, when I joined, I didn't know that there's going to be pandemic, or, I mean, it was happening, I guess, but it felt so far away, and, you know, it didn't feel like it really affected us then. So it was interesting because I don't have much experience, but it resonated with what you said, that there is this, I guess, sense of, I don't know if it's control, but it's just, it's a great, I'm very excited to be able to connect and grow my own food. And I guess at the same time, there's an anxiety of not being able to learn from others and have a more community feel that I was looking forward to. But yeah, I'm very excited. So that's all. Thank you.
Claudia, it's really nice to hear from you. I see a couple other names of folks who also have plots in the community garden this year. And I should mention that we are going to have some online workshops coming up. And pretty soon we're going to do an online garden orientation, like an orientation for the new gardeners also. So it will look really different in terms of, at the community garden, I think a lot of very casual, like peer teaching between gardeners happened, and also just socializing between gardeners. And we're trying to offer as much as we can online this season too. So I think we'll try to retool given the current situation, but hopefully we'll still be able to continue building community in that space too.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen, for being with us and for sharing your wisdom and perspective and practice. We really appreciate it. We'll be back Thursday at 3 with Kelly Kettlewell, Director of the Counseling and Student Development Center, and again next Tuesday with Rick Reinhardt of the Civic Museum. And that'll be it for this semester. We'll pause our practice of gathering this way for a little while and see what we want to do over the summer. But it's been so nice to be together. Thanks all for your presence, and we'll see those who can make it on Thursday.